The Mughal Empire had been established in 1526 in the Indian subcontinent. The Mughals greatly expanded their empire in quick time. However, an Afghan resurgence under the leadership of Sher Shah Suri led to a crushing defeat for the Mughals in 1540. The Afghans formed their own government and the Suri Empire was established in the Indian subcontinent. The Mughal Emperor Humayun was on the run, while Sher Shah Suri was expanding his own influence. He took control of Punjab, curbed a rebellion in Bengal, and conquered the central Indian province of Malwa. Alongside his military expansions, Sher Shah initiated some administrative reforms that made him extremely popular among his subjects. Tariq-e-Sher Shahi is the biography of Emperor Sher Shah Suri. That source has been used extensively in the preparation of this video documentary. Sher Shah Suri had consolidated his empire in northern India, and he was looking to expand into central India. An opportunity came in 1543 when a local king grew unpopular among his nobility. Rajput ruler Puran Mal held the strategic region of Raisin. Disappointed by his oppressive rule, his officers and neighboring principalities appealed to Sher Shah for help. They begged him for the annexation of the region of Raisin. Puran Mal was an old ally of Humayun, and Sher Shah knew that the presence of a pro-Mughal power would threaten his southern border. So, a large body of Afghan troops laid siege to Raisin and cut off its supplies from all sides. King Puranmal had strong defensive preparations, but was faced with severe logistical problems owing to the lack of supplies. The defenders were staring at death by starvation. That led King Puranmal to discuss surrender terms after relaxing his defensive preparations. Sher Shah Suri saw the opportunity and broke off peace negotiations. His war elephants that were kept in readiness were now ordered to advance forward. The Afghans stormed the fort at daybreak. The Rajputs fell hopelessly, with their kings among those who were slaughtered. Raisin became a part of the Suri Empire. Sher Shah had left the wealthy province of Punjab under the command of his two generals, Khawaz Khan and Haibat Khan Niyazi. News of disputes having broken out among the two Afghan generals reached Sher Shah Suri, and he was compelled to transfer Khawaz Khan away from Punjab. General Haibat Khan Niyazi was appointed the governor of Punjab and was given the responsibility to bring the entirety of Punjab under control. The new governor displayed impressive performance. He subdued the hostile local tribes and conquered the city of Multan from them. There had been a remarkable rise of a major power in Rajputana in the recent past. Maldev Rathore, the king of Marwar, was well known for his military skills and diplomatic abilities. He had rapidly expanded his kingdom in the past few years by annexing Nagaur, Ajmer, Merta, Bikaner, and some other regions in Rajputana. Maldev Rathore in the past had attempted to form an alliance with Mughal Emperor Humayun. His attempt did not materialize, but it had given Sher Shah Suri a valid reason to hold hostile intentions against the kingdom of Marwar. After the end of monsoon 1543, Sher Shah Suri was mobilizing his army at the border of Marwar. Around this time, he received news that Mughal Emperor Humayun had left the Indian soil with his family. This left Sher Shah free to commit himself to the invasion of Marwar. The massive Afghan army marched towards Jodhpur, the capital of Marwar. It met the Marwar troops at the village of Sumail, around 100 kilometers of Jodhpur. The Afghan supply lines were overstretched, and that proved a costly error. For the first time in his career, Sher Shah was facing problems with logistics. The desert region, with its scanty rainfall and low agricultural productivity, limited the ability of the Afghan troops to live off the land. The Afghans were accustomed to campaigns in the resourceful Indo-Gangetic plains, while the local Rajputs of Marwar were used to the dry conditions. Sher Shah found it difficult to supply his troops with food and his horses with fodder. Sher Shah devised a cunning plan to save the situation. The Afghans arranged false letter to fall into the hands of King Maldev Rathore. The letter was pretended to be addressed by Sher Shah Suri to the generals of the Marwar army. In the letter, Sher Shah had expressed satisfaction that the generals had agreed to arrest their king Maldev Rathore and were ready to deliver him over to the Afghan army. In return, Sher Shah had offered the Marwar generals high positions in his empire. King Maldev Rathore fell for the trap. Suspecting those letters to be true, he lost trust in his generals. The king went back to his capital of Jodhpur with a part of his army. When some of the Marwar generals came to know of this disgraceful incident, they were astonished. They grew determined to prove their loyalty to their king, even at the cost of their life. With a small army of around 9,000 Rajput troops, they charged the much larger Afghan army on the 5th of January. The Afghans were initially taken by surprise, but eventually managed to organize their defensive arrangements. The Rajputs soon perished after proving their loyalty to their king. Later, Sher Shah was informed of the event. The emperor expressed his admiration for the fallen Rajput soldiers. He remarked, "I nearly lost my whole empire for a handful of bajra." Bajra or millet is the primary crop of the agriculturally underproductive region of Marwar. This victory gave Sher Shah control of regions in Rajputana extending from Ajmer to Mount Abu that previously belonged to the kingdom of Marwar. Sher Shah left behind Afghan troops in those regions and set out on the expedition of subjugating whole of Rajputana. Sher Shah arrived near the city of Chittor, capital of the kingdom of Mewar. Mewar was going through a dark phase and was too powerless to resist. Its king Rana Uday Singh decided to surrender, and the keys of Fort Chittorgarh was handed over to Sher Shah Suri, who appointed Afghan General Shamsher Khan as the governor of Chittor. With the exception of Jaisalmer, the whole of Rajputana came into the direct or indirect control of the Suri Empire. Sher Shah adopted the smart policy of allowing the local rulers retain their kingdoms as his vassal. This ensured the political and geographical isolation of various kingdoms in Rajputana, preventing the future possibilities of their unification that could have led to a major uprising. Kalinjhar was a region in central India. Its ruler Kirat Singh had offended Sher Shah Suri by providing refuge to the political enemies of the Afghan emperor. A large body of Afghan troops, led by the emperor himself, laid siege to the Kalinjhar fort in the November of 1544. However, the strong fort was brilliantly defended, and the Afghans could make no progress despite besieging it for half a year. Sher Shah Suri realized that the only hope of breakthrough was by blowing up the wall of the fort. Sher Shah ordered the digging of mines and the construction of a high tower. On the 22nd of May, Sher Shah ordered an assault on the fort and personally supervised operations. The emperor went to the top of the tower with his close associates and ordered rockets to be thrown into the fort. By a tragic accident, one of the rockets rebounded off the fort and fell on the Afghan gunpowder storage area, leading to a massive explosion. Sher Shah received severe burns that would soon prove to be fatal for him. Just before his death, he received the happy news that the fort of Kalinjhar had been captured by the Afghans. According to his last wish, his tomb was shifted to Sasaram in the province of Bihar, from where he started his career. At this point, the Suri Empire controlled around half of the Indian subcontinent. Most of the northern India was included in the empire, with the exception of Assam, Kashmir, and Gujarat. The empire of Sher Shah Suri stretched from Bengal in the east to Gakkar country in the northwest, and from Himalayas in the north to the Vindhya mountain range in the south. During his reign, Sher Shah had initiated the construction of many big roads that would connect his capital to various parts of his empire. 4 big roads were planned by Sher Shah Suri. The first connected Agra to Burhanpur in the Deccan. The second connected Agra to Jodhpur and Chittor in Rajputana. The third connected Lahore to Multan. The final one connected Sonargaon in Bengal to the Indus River through Agra, Delhi, and Lahore. The final road extended around 2,000 kilometers and can be identified with the modern-day Grand Trunk Road. Trees were planted on both sides of the roads. Sarais or guest houses were built every 5 kilometers on the roadside. Nearly 2,000 guest houses were built across the empire. Crime prevention measures were undertaken at the guest houses. The guest houses were well provisioned with food supplies and provided guests with every necessity. The guest houses benefited not just the travelers but also the news carriers working in the imperial postal department. This introduction of guest houses encouraged traders and it helped enhance the revenue of the empire. Sher Shah was a reformer and not an innovator. He virtually transformed the medieval Indian administration and made it serve the interests of the common people. Sher Shah did not come from a royal background. Having had to make his way through adversities all his life, Sher Shah Suri did not possess the features usually observed in a born aristocrat. He displayed an utilitarian outlook in his behavior and avoided giving special favors to anyone, especially his relatives. Sher Shah Suri devoted more than 12 hours a day to the affairs of the state. In the early morning, he received daily or weekly reports from various departments. He accordingly issued his orders that were soon acted upon. Later in the day, he would go out on the inspection of a random regiment of the army. Occasionally, new recruits were enlisted, and imperial horses were branded in his presence. Thereafter, he held court where he received nobles and envoys. He also inspected the revenues and looked into various incomes and expenditures. As a soldier, Sher Shah Suri possessed courage blended with calmness, extraordinary patience, and energy. Rarely did he make a direct attack on the enemy, with the exception of the battles of Chausa and Kannauj. His tactics often put his enemies off guard, often leading to surprise attacks or ambush from multiple directions. Speed and promptness were often used by him to gain advantage over the enemy. Like Aurangzeb a century after him, he did not hesitate playing treacherous cards on the enemy at times. Sher Shah believed in sharing the toils and privations of even the most humble soldiers that lifted his image among his troops. Sher Shah Suri's reorganization of his administration, settlement of land revenue, and tax and currency reforms entitle him to the category of great rulers, if not the best king of medieval times. A majority of medieval Indian historians hold him in very high regard, next only to Mughal Emperor Akbar. The Suri Empire has been greatly expanded, but the accidental death of Sher Shah Suri has put the future of the Indian subcontinent in a highly uncertain position. Will the Suri Empire survive? Who will succeed Sher Shah Suri as the emperor of the Indian subcontinent? Will the defeated Mughals make a comeback? You can find out by watching the next episode of this documentary series. Thank you for watching.